New autopsy findings that have come out from the Franklin County Coroner's Office, and honest to God, not what I thought. Not what they told us originally. Way different. This is our very first, and I'm not going to lie, horrifying look at how Spencer and Monique Tepe were murdered inside their own home, inside their bedroom, just feet away from their two little children. The details are just, well, listen, they're brutal, but they are so informative. They tell us so much about what happened and the anger, the seething anger that this killer had. This wasn't a couple of shots, guys. This was not. Spencer Tepe was shot 7 times, not just a couple. Remember they said several times, and Monique once to the chest. Not even close. He was shot 7 times. He was shot in the head, the torso, the chest, his extremities. I have details on all of those shots and what many of them mean. The details of each of them is so illuminating, but it is also very sad because these shots tell a story. I'm going to walk you through them all and a couple of thoughts as to how they were delivered and from where and what he might have been doing. And then even more kind of breathtakingly sad is how long it took him to die. When it comes to Monique, remember they told us she was shot in the chest? Much worse, and much worse than Spencer. This is even more tragic, you guys. She was shot 9 times. Not once to the chest like we were told, 9 times. If you do the math, 9 shots to Monique. I'll tell you in a moment where she was shot and how informative those injuries are. And 7 shots to Spencer. That's 16 gunshots total. Now, some of you may be gun enthusiasts. Some of you may not know anything about clips and magazines and 9mm or any of that stuff. But they do have a gun that they seized from Dr. Michael McKee's home in Chicago. And they said it is associated with the murders. We also know that there were 3 9mm shell casings that were found at the murder scene. There were 16 total shots. That means 13 shell casings were taken out. But there's more than that. And listen, I've got a million theories about that. If you're firing in the nighttime and it's dark, or maybe it's not dark, maybe the lights are on, but you're firing and there's death and there's frenzy and blood and you got to get out of there. Maybe you'll collect what you could find. You found 13. You didn't find 3. Maybe those ended up in the bedding or under the bed or somewhere where he couldn't see, or she, whoever the killer is. But the alleged killer is Monique Tepe's ex-husband, Dr. Michael McKee, vascular surgeon, practicing just outside of Chicago. So yeah, there were 16 shots. I can also tell you that I got a 9mm weapon, has a clip that holds 15. There were 16 shots. 1 in the chamber. 1 in the chamber, 15 in the mag. There you go, 16. So you can do this with just 1 gun, 9mm gun with that kind of magazine. 16 shots. Okay, so back to Monique. Monique was shot in the chest, in the torso. She was also shot in her arms. And the saddest, most disturbing detail is that Monique Tepe, beautiful Monique Tepe, brand new mom of a 17-month-old and a 4-year-old, she was shot in the face. Monique Tepe was shot in the face. I'll tell you exactly where in a moment, but I also have information on how long it took Monique to die. I've also got the toxicology results, including what Spencer and Monique Tepe were and were not taking, and why one of those details and findings is just so incredibly telling about the circumstance that they were living in. And fortunately, I have one of the best forensic criminologists in America today joining me on this episode. She is way smarter than I am at this stuff. As she puts it, she speaks blood fluently. And her ability to lay out the wound pattern analysis in that Tepe bedroom is exquisite. Her name is Dr. Laura Petler, and trust me, you're going to want to hear everything. that she has to say. Quick note from my sponsor. If something goes wrong and you are injured, the last thing you want is to realize too late that the person representing you is not equipped for the fight. Think about it like this. If your house is on fire, you don't call somebody with a garden hose. Morgan & Morgan was built to take on these fights. The firm was founded more than 35 years ago after its founder, John Morgan, saw how easily regular families can get overwhelmed by a system that is not designed for them. That's why their mission has always been to work for the people. Today, Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm with more than 1,000 attorneys, offices across all 50 states, and over $30 billion recovered for their clients. There's no upfront fees, and they only get paid if they win. If you're ever injured due to someone else's negligence, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/Banfield. Again, forthepeople.com/Banfield, or click the link below. All right, back to the case. Here is my conversation, and it is a good one. Pour yourself a long, stiff drink, y'all. This is forensic criminologist Dr. Laura Pettler. So let's talk about these findings, Dr. Pettler. First of all, my breath was taken away. I did not expect to see this.
No, the autopsy report, I only have the one for Spencer. So that's what I've been reviewing earlier today. And it is very graphic. It is very disturbing, but it's also very telling of the story of what happened in that room. And wound pattern analysis is critically important within the scope of the process of analyzing the evidence in totality. So it's important that we take it as one piece of like a pie or a puzzle, and we analyze this one piece and then we plug it back into the victimology and compare and contrast it from there. So that's kind of where I'm at with it at this point.
Well, what surprised me was that the original reports were that Monique was shot in the chest and Spencer was shot multiple times. And that is a very different story than what these findings show.
Right. And one thing that I always say is that as a person who has been doing this for many, many years, working with law enforcement as a district attorney's investigator and as a deputy coroner, what the media is told or what has been released to the media or what's going on in the public is very different always than what is going on actually inside the investigation. And that's just this situation. That was the first thing I thought of as soon as I read this information, was that same thing. We got that she was shot once, he was shot 3 times. At that point, when I was analyzing the material then, I said that he appears to be the target if that's the situation. If he has, more violence inflicted onto him, he appears to be the target. And I did think it was a bit odd that she only was reportedly having 1 gunshot wound. But at the same time, if he if the shooter perceived Spencer as the real problem that like stole his wife or something like that, I could understand it from that standpoint too.
Or, as we discussed in our other episode, which was, a really disturbing conversation, but critical, sometimes people want to mentally torture their ex by hurting the ex's new love. And so it wouldn't have been off base to think that the killer killed Spencer in front of Monique to hurt her before he killed Monique.
Right. That was definitely something we could have considered in the beginning when we had more of the prelim information. The wound pattern analysis at this point for me is so aggressive. It's so much like it exceeds what's necessary to kill them both. And not just one person, but 2 people. This is a dumping of extreme rage in a very instrumental, organized sophisticated, structured way that is for the purpose of pain and this cathartic way of like releasing emotion, anxiety, perceived wrong, stuff like that.
So I'm going to get to the details and go wound by wound and where everything happened. And some of them are so upsetting. I mean, the one to the face, it just, all of that. I'm going to get to that in a moment. But I do want to touch on the fact that originally we were told there were only 3 shell casings recovered, not if there were 6. Gunshots. So what is your assessment of that story? 3 reported casings found, 16 shots.
One of the first things I thought of was the type of firearm, that was used, and is there an element of, like in the middle, or are there 2 firearms, involved? Was the magazine a large magazine that could hold that many bullets, that kind of thing? Because that is a really specific question, whether or not I don't know if that information has been reported, but that would be huge to know if the offender in this case had to stop after shooting one person and reload, or is it going back and forth like this tennis match kind of thing? Based on the positioning, I don't think so. And we'll get to that as we go through.
And silencer suppression, device. Either there's 2 silencers if there's more weapons, but it sounds to me when you've got a suppression device, it's probably one weapon.
And so, that goes to the sophistication of this and to the organized planning aspects of this. This is not like some frenzied attack. This is an organized, structured attack where the offender, and again, we'll get to this, but it's very important to recognize that he can control his position, right? And I'm saying his because there's been a suspect charged in this case. States alleging that it was Michael.
But the killer,
exactly.
Whoever the killer is, could control the position.
The position, and that's what we're seeing in this wound pattern analysis. Yeah.
So I'm just going to, say it. I got a 9mm, and we've got magazine that holds 15 and 1 in the chamber. There you go. 15 in the mag, 1 in the chamber. There's 16 bullets.
That's what I'm saying. Like, is it that type of a weapon that can hold that many? And like, to your point, it does sound like one firearm because we know that there was some type of a silencer involved. But I always keep everything options open and alternatives because, on this side where we're not working the case, we're analyzing the case and what's been reported. It's, I don't ever want to paint anybody into a corner, including myself or any viewers, and mislead people. So it's very, very important to always keep the idea open-ended at this point.
Yeah, without question. And listen, we were astounded. Many times we've been astounded, particularly in Idaho, when suddenly we found there was a sheath left behind. That came out later. And so suddenly everything changed, and so we always keep ourselves open to the possibility that there is, a right turn coming, but they, the specifics of how they said a weapon that was associated with the murders. They didn't say the weapon, so there's always an option there. Okay, let's do the wound pattern analysis here, because again, forensics tell the story of the crime better than anyone else can. I often say dead men do tell tales from what is left behind. And I feel like this story of the autopsy findings, and I do have the summary of Monique's. But let's start with Spencer, okay? Because you've got the autopsy of Spencer in front of you. 7 gunshot wounds. So let's just start there, because it wasn't just multiple, it was 7.
Right. The way, so as a forensic criminologist, I, of course, don't render any kind of medical opinion, but my job in the process of crime scene to courtroom is to serve as an analyst to where the forensic pathologist, when we do have somebody sitting at the round table analyzing this and they're explaining the medical aspects, my job is to explain the emotional, the cognitive, and the behavioral aspects of this and how it ties into the victimology and how it compares back to what we know about Monique, what we know about Spencer, and what they might have been doing. So let's start with the head.
Gunshot wounds. Spencer was shot once in the head, and the report is that one bullet traveled through his ear.
Yes, and so I'm looking at 7 gunshot wounds of total: head, neck, trunk, extremities. And one thing that I noticed about this, Ashley, is that everything is to the left side of his body. And that's, of course, consistent with a right-handed shooter. Like that is most consistent. And that's based on seeing so many of these and, turning sideways, almost kind of, yes, perpendicular. But then some of the shapes that they're describing in here, some of them are round and some of them are regular. And some of them are round defect. And so that's giving you more of a perpendicular. Yes.
Straight
and then
on.
the ovoid.
Right. Straight on. Straight
like
shot.
Gunshot wound number 2 is ovoid. So, or do we have this twisting motion, so that you've got damage to the ear, then damage to the neck behind the ear. And then you've got in the chest, and this is like rapid fire, because you'd have the person turning.
So that's interesting. It tells me that the possibility is that the shooter was aiming for Spencer's face straight on, and as Spencer turned, he ended up being slightly shot, slightly grazed through that ear and out the neck. But that would be. The aim would not be, I think I want to take you out at the ear. It would be, I want to get you in the face.
Right. And, yes, it could be directly to the face. And a lot of these anger retaliatory type offenders, of course, they're going for the face. They're going for the neck, the chest, anything. Because like the wounds are not on the big toe, not in the knee, right? And so like where the wounds are is just as important as where the wounds are not. So...
Well, guess what? Especially since the alleged killer is a vascular surgeon and knows exactly where the kill shots are best.
But enviro socioculturalism, and that is my made up word, literally, for the aggregate of how the offender's environment, education, institutions, traditions, customs, belief system, value, hobbies influence the emotionality, the cognition, and the behavior of the offender. And we're seeing a reflection of, I know where I have to shoot someone in order to kill them.
So that's the headshot, one headshot. There's also 3 torso shots, and they are broken into 2 of them to the chest and 1 of them to the back. What are you seeing in the actual information about those shots?
So gunshot wound 2 is to the this part of the neck. It would be kind of like, then you have the ear, and then you have like the back of the neck, and then you have the upper left upper lateral chest. So, that's this area in general. And then you have the lower, the front of the chest. So there, again, it's it's an element to me of potentially turning. And these are also, they're described as round defects. So the round defects is, is it straight? Yes, it's straight on again. So let me flip the page here.
Are all those ones, are all the torso shots, the 2 to the chest, 1 to the back, are those all round?
3 and 4.
Or are those deflected?
Number 3 and 4 are round. Number 3 and 4 round.
Okay.
Number 2 is ovoid to the neck, so it's and it has a dark brown marginal abrasion, which is a different type of marginal abrasion. That's the kind of the ring around the wound. And so sometimes you'll see it described in autopsy reports, like as they'll kind of measure it, and then they'll explain what it looks like. So for example, like they may be talking about distance, so like, is it an area of the body that is covered with clothing to where when the projectile goes through the intermediary target, so like, on my shirt, it would go through here and then go through another shirt and then go into the skin. It's hitting different things. And so it changes what the abrasion collar looks like a lot of times. And so they can infer distance sometimes.
Well, we read in the report, he was found wearing just shorts, which could be boxer shorts, could be athletic shorts, could be anything, and nothing else but his wedding ring. So it appears from the autopsy report that he did not have any clothing on his torso. So what would that tell you about that ring?
I couldn't draw an opinion beyond that, Ashley, because that would cross into the medical side of it. And I couldn't infer anything.
Yeah. Doesn't tell you that it's close range though, or far range.
When there's that kind of collar. My experience with forensic pathologists has been that they all define the range a little differently. So sometimes they'll define something that was close range, then intermediate range, then distant range. And there's just a general guideline in forensic pathology that we use as reconstructionists for it. But at the same time, I am always very careful I always make sure that I ask the forensic pathologist in this case, I would specifically ask them to say, when we take the mannequin in there, for the mannequin to be, for all the wounds to go back on the mannequin or the styrofoam head or whatever apparatus we're using to demonstrate the wound paths through the body, I always ask them to define what they consider is close range, contact, close, intermediate, and distance. So it's important that we always get those definitions from the specific pathologist that does the autopsy report.
So I'm so glad you said that, because when I get to Monique Tepe, there is a report that she was shot at close range. So I'm going to get to that in a moment. I want to finish up with Spencer. The back. Shot in the back. I am curious if that is the continuation of the rotation, maybe trying to get away from the shots, or if it's possible that by the time Spencer was down, there was an execution shot to the back. Or does anybody ever do that? Do they do an execution shot to the back, or do they do the last final shot to the head?
They definitely do this final shoot them from behind kind of a thing, this whole, turning motion. And it's showing that the position, there could be a lot of movement going on between the shooter and the victim in this case. And it also says there's no visible fouling or stippling. So that's telling me that it could be farther away. And as you mentioned, Spencer's not wearing a shirt. So there's not an intermediate target that it's gone through any kind of substance or substrate, before it hit the skin. So generally speaking, it's consistent with, for me at this point reading this, it's consistent with turning all the way around, moving, and then it's also a round defect. So all the way around.
All the way around, or down on the ground and someone standing over him?
It could be down on the ground, but standing. It's that's hard to say, Ashley, because we don't know the kind of position that he could been in, right? So like the fact that it's round just means that the straight on. So like we really can't infer his position.
You can't tell if he's standing. You can't tell if he's lying down when he gets that final shot,
that's exactly right. We really can't tell that at this point because, like people don't really open themselves up very much when they're being attacked like that. They were more likely to like crouch down. So like I'm trying to kind of demonstrate what I'm seeing in here. And I think that, it's at the 1 to 5 o'clock aspect, and it's 12.5 inches from the top of the head. So they measure it from the top here down to the posterior midline, which is the center of the back, and no stippling, which means it's a little bit further away.
So let's talk about the extremities. He was shot once in his left hand and once in the right upper arm. And all I can imagine is somebody who says no and does this.
That's right.
No.
That's
and then
exactly
you're
right.
getting, if you're aiming for the face or the head, then you're getting a shot, let's see, it's the left hand. You're getting a shot here and maybe the arm there. Is that what you would picture?
Yes, absolutely. And we see that a lot of times in these types of cases that where, one of the questions that I always ask a forensic pathologist is, can the victim make purposeful movement? And that's really, really important. What shot is fatal? You know what I mean? Like you always have to identify, is the ear shot fatal? Is the neck shot fatal? Is the chest wound fatal? You've got blood pressure issues going on. You've got chemical issues happening in the body. There's all kinds of things going on from a biological standpoint that you have to ask that medical professional who specializes specifically in unnatural violent death. That's a very different type of death than hospital pathology.
Yes.
So asking that question is the number one question I would be asking this pathologist right now. Could Spencer Tepe have made purposeful movement after the shot? And which shot? We have the wound to the hand. That's not going to be fatal. So the wound to the upper back, the wound to, what is it going through everything that, all of the damage, because it's causing catastrophic damage through the body. But again, it still does not take 7 gunshot wounds, to cause a ceasing of life in this case. This is consistent with, anger retaliation.
Overkill.
Yeah, it's a complete rage type of a killing, but it's controlled. And that's one of the things that I really, really want to get across is that this is inconsistent with frenzied attack. This is consistent with a planned, premeditated, organized, sophisticated, thoughtful, mindful attack.
Methodical.
Yes, absolutely. Very methodical.
Well, this sounds obvious to me, but there's probably something I don't understand in this line. It says cause of death, obviously gunshot wounds to the head, neck, trunk, and extremities. But then it says included visceral, skeletal, and soft tissue damage. Again, it sounds kind of obvious, but is there something I'm missing?
Gunshot wounds to the head, neck, trunk, extremities, visceral, skeletal. No, so the cause of death is different than the manner of death. The cause of death, we're talking about what caused the body to be unable to sustain life. And the injuries that were sustained by Spencer Tepe, caused by the wounds to his head, neck, trunk, and extremities, basically rendered his body unable to sustain life. Plus, you've got a lot of bleeding. The bloodstains in this case, they're going to tell a whole story on their own. And bloodstains are, to me, one of the most honest forms of evidence, and they always tell the truth. They don't work for any particular side. They have no dog in the fight. They're waiting for someone who speaks bloodstain. I speak fluent bloodstain, and I'm telling you that this case, because he had no shirt on, the bloodstain evidence is potential to really give context to the wound pattern analysis. So we would use it in conjunction, use it in tandem. We would marry the two together within the mosaic of the victimology, suspectology, laboratory reports, the firearms examiner's report, the test firing of the firearm, all of those things in relation to the gunshot wounds to the head, trunk, the neck, extremities.
So, for instance,
and it's consistent with homicide, not accident or anything else. There's no other way you can do this.
I mean, for sure, manner of death is homicide. We're there. We got an arrest. We got an arrest. Man killed man. Yeah. So,
right.
Human killed human.
Right.
Not that man. He's alleged. But I love that you said bloodstains will tell the story. We don't have that here yet, but you and I in the other episode, and we'll link that other episode in this episode as well in the description. But you told me before, and we discussed patterns of blood. So, for instance, if Monique Tepe is on the ground, is found dead on the ground, and underneath her is Spencer Tepe's blood spatter, then we know he was being shot before she died. But if you mentioned it earlier, if the shooter shot back and forth, that could also be a result of Spencer Tepe's blood being found underneath Monique. Maybe she didn't die there's a little bit of wiggle room there, right?
Right. And so the sequencing events, when we're talking about bloodstain pattern analysis, we're talking about the analysis of the size, shape, location, and distribution of bloodstains. I mean, that's just the very bare bones of the definition. And blood, luckily for all of us, it behaves by the laws of
gravity.
Physics, right?
Physics and gravity,
Yeah, I love it. I love gravity. Blood don't run uphill. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like a catchphrase in that I've always have said. And
people who pose bodies don't realize that body already bled down, and that body is now sitting up.
And flow patterns. So another thing that we're going to be looking for here for me is flow patterns. So how does the blood drip from the ear? And then all of a sudden, does it turn left or does it turn right? Because it shows that the body is upright potentially at the time of the shot, right? And then the body goes forward or the body goes backwards. And so the blood will start to come down, but then it'll hook and it'll show you these different directions. And so it shows you movement after the infliction of injury. And so that's really, really critical when you have a multiple stabbing case or beating case, or in this case, multiple gunshot wounds, because, this is just, he wanted that control and that structure. He really needed the production of this to go very well for him. In this case where, knives can be chaotic, and, this is not like a dissociative frenzy, and this is not like a dissociative frenzy. This is a very, very controlled attack where it's front to back, it's left to right, in Spencer's case,
it's dynamic.
Yes, and and right to left in some ways, it's upward and downward. So you have these it's not static. This is as opposed to a victim sleep in the bed. You come up behind the victim, shoot the victim once in the back of the head, no movement, no purposeful movement after the time of the shot. This is indicative of maybe the victim is moving, maybe the offender is moving, maybe they're both moving together until the force is applied so greatly to the victim that the victim cannot move anymore. And so it's immediate loss of all this neurological function too, and that's more on the medical side. But to me, like, you're being shot. You know what I mean? Like you're thinking what's happening. So there's not like maybe they're thinking, I just have to get away. Or like to your point, is it Is it all 7 shots to Spencer and then to Monique, or the other way around, or back and forth?
Or back and
to
forth.
me, it looks like, based on the clustering, and I say that loosely just because we have an ear shot on Spencer, we have a neck shot, we have to me, this is in a cluster. Right?
So it's shoot, 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 because otherwise he'd be moving too far away to be able to get them all in the same zone. Yeah.
Right. And you might have, going through the center piece of the body as well, and I've seen that many times. So for me, it's kind of like, I'm looking at it like, yes, there's movement, but how much movement? And that's where the forensic pathologist comes in to say, yes, okay, so here's the purposeful movement that this person could have made. You've got the distal area of the arm hit, you've got the hand hit. Those are not going to be fatal. And the forensic pathologist is going to explain what could be fatal, what caused a loss of blood to where the blood pressure was, dissipating, where there's, the person's going out like a candle.
There is this other piece in the report that said time to death, which to me as a layperson means how long did it take him to die? And the coroner determined death occurred within seconds to minutes. Minutes made me upset. And I wanted to ask you about that, but also with that kind of terror and also confusion, would there have been a significant amount of pain?
Again, that's on the medical side, but my experience with understanding autopsy reports and listening to forensic pathologists all of these years, they've said that there's not a lot of pain in cases where the body releases endorphins. So when we become injured as human beings, generally speaking, to protect us somewhat. And in some cases, there isn't a lot of pain. And then in other cases, there is. So again, the forensic pathologist would be the one in this particular situation, in the location of those particular wounds, to be able to really, really elaborate on whether they thought there was pain.
I hope that your body's defensive mechanisms would kick in for Spencer and Monique, and that it just would be terrifying. Yes. But hopefully painful, no. Okay, let's turn our attention to Monique and the reports that we know about her autopsy. And that is that she suffered 9. So she suffered 2 more gunshots than Spencer did. Considering she's the ex and Spencer's not, that's probably not surprising to you.
No, that's the report, is that she suffered from 9 gunshot wounds. He suffered from 7. It's domestic violence homicide. So even though he is a former intimate partner, it still is classified as domestic violence homicide or intimate partner homicide. And the reports that I read was that he threatened to kill her, the suspect in this case, the defendant in this case, who's been charged with these crimes. There was domestic violence prior to this, and this type of dumping, this rage type dumping into the victim, is an emotional release. It releases like a perceived grievance, abandonment, those kinds of things. And the shooter in this case, regardless of who it is, knows how to operate a weapon. They can fire the weapon repeatedly under stress. They understand how to take down the target. And not only did he intend, or the killer intend, to kill Monique and Spencer, but also dump all of the rage that was being experienced into this act. It was like, one bullet, that was nowhere near enough. Two was nowhere near enough. But it's like, was it, it's interesting to me that like, you mentioned, your firearm and how many projectiles that firearm holds, and that we have 16 in this case as well. And it's like, okay, is there even a plan that I'm going to shoot you 9 times and I'm going to shoot you 7? Is that even part of the plan? Because we do see it. And originally, like, when we thought it was 1 wound to the chest for Monique, 3,
Right.
It was the opposite. Now we know that it's very consistent with the pattern of intimate partner homicide when there are firearms involved, and when there's somebody that is perceived as like a rescuer or an interference or something like that. The shooter in this case was able to adapt his or her or whoever's position to make sure that this got done, and it got done exactly the way that it was planned. And to me, that's what her wound pattern shows us, is that it went as planned.
This episode is sponsored by Cowboy Colostrum. And if you have been trying to fix your gut health, this which, everybody would, I don't know. I think everybody would turn differently to try to protect themselves, but I would turn to the left and protect myself that way, which would mean the right cheek.
Mm-hmm. It depends on where they are in the room, assuming that they are in the bedroom, assuming that they're in bed, assuming that, and that again, like I'm using the word assuming because we don't know yet where they were found.
We do know
other
this.
Than the 911
Yeah,
call.
the 911 caller said it looks like he's beside the bed. So
right.
Rolled out of bed, jumped up out of terror, and both of them are standing. But I think there's got to be some standing because there's these straight on shots, and it's very hard to get over someone in bed that many times and then have them roll off.
Logic. Right, exactly. And like you're thinking about logic, like I said before, we know there's nobody standing on the ceiling, you know what I mean? Shooting downward into the bed. So it's like, it's consistent with, is
Get up.
Spencer Tepe on, yes. Is he on the right side of the bed? So if you're at the foot of the bed, you're looking at the bed, is Monique on the left side and Spencer on the right side? And then,
or how about this? How about this? Someone who is so rage filled, will they be really satisfied just shooting you in the bed, or will they want you to get up? I'm about to tell you everything I want to unload, and then I'm going to do something to you, and I'm going to make you watch as I do something to your partner. I mean, I almost feel as though the satisfaction for somebody that rage filled to do shots to the face for both of them, right? They're going to want to take their time communicating the issues that they have with these people, right?
Sometimes they do use very direct language. Like you said, they sometimes will go, get up, don't talk, move, sit down. They'll use very clear, direct language. We don't know in this case if there was anything spoken.
Monique said to friends that this is out through reports. Monique told friends who reported to police that he said, I will buy the house next to you. I will track you down. You will always be my wife. And so that's why I think if that's true, that won't be somebody who's satisfied just coming in, popping off those shots and leaving. There's going to want to be some conversation and some settling of grievances about all of it.
That's right. I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, this is about a prolonged, long-term type grievance that he's had with her. And I'm speaking about what the state's alleging, with this, in this case. in domestic violence homicide, unfortunately, this is a pattern that is seen a lot of times, where the offender wants ultimate power and control of the victim,
and a little bit of torture, a little bit of inflicting pain and suffering before the death.
Yes, it can be
mental or
can
otherwise.
Also be like that. Yes, and there has to be a familiarity to come into somebody's house, come all the way through it, come upstairs, and end up in the bedroom, because the bedroom is a very purposeful location. That is not a random location for inflicting gunshot wounds on these victims, to me, Ashley. And that, and I'm saying that because think about a bed, think about a bedroom. That is a very intimate space. And he didn't kill Monique Tepe and Spencer Tepe when they were out to dinner somewhere. He killed them in their bedroom.
Or getting out of their car outside at the garage, walking inside. But I will say this. If you're doing it under the cover of darkness in the middle of the night, the only place you're going to find them likely is in a bedroom.
But that met his needs. You know, the killer, the needs are met by, you know, you are always going to be my wife, and you are here in bed with another man. And this is where that, yes. And so to me,
if he did
it's a reflection. It's, yes. I mean, the defendant in this case, to me, the whole thing is a reflection of the personality, cognition, and emotionality of the offender. What are we seeing from those standpoints? And, you know, it's very consistent with a rage-filled, anger retaliatory, conflict resolution benefit type murder. You know, what is the conflict between the victim and the offender? How does the offender choose to resolve that conflict through murder? And then who benefits from the victim's death? That's my matrix for conflict resolution benefit murder. And it you know, usually fits very, very well with domestic violence homicide. And in my opinion, it fits in well with this case.
So let's talk about the other injuries, because gunshots, the majority of the clip and what was in the chamber here. Let's go with the chest. The chest apparently received 3 gunshots. So 1 to the face, right cheek, and then 3 to the chest.
So it's not as much movement, you know. I don't think we're seeing as much movement out of Monique as we are with Spencer. You know, to me, Spencer, and of course I could be wrong, but to me, he could be on the right side of the bed. He is moving off the right side of the bed, falls down onto the floor, and then somehow ends up with a gunshot wound. It's different. You know, you have a gunshot wound to the right side of, you said right side of her cheek, right?
Right cheek. Yeah. A gunshot wound to the right cheek.
Right. Okay. So right cheek, and then 3 to the right side of the chest.
I just know 3 shots to the chest. I don't have the
so we don't know the side.
Left. Yeah.
Okay.
No,
yeah.
Yet.
So like, and we don't know if they're round. We don't know if they're ovoid. You know, we don't know what she was wearing. So there's a lot of information that's missing to be able to really, really take a deep dive like we can with Spencer, because we actually have a report written by a medical professional. But in her case, you know, it's a bit more open-ended at this point. And those gunshot wounds, to me, that pattern sounds like a victim that was not moving as much. But also, this shooter can understands how to aim across, multiple planes of the body, and repeat the sequence, to be able to shoot. Like Spencer is shot in the chest, Monique is also shot in the chest. Spencer is shot in the head, Monique is also shot in the head. So like the killer can repeat and remanufacture the same pattern.
I keep coming back to the suspect who they arrested, and that is someone who is a vascular surgeon. Look, I know a lot about how to kill people easily and quickly, only because I was a war correspondent and I knew how I was supposed to protect myself in a situation in a battlefield. But I also, I did the NRA course, and the kill zone is right here. This is the kill zone right here. You are going for that. And as a vascular surgeon, you would know exactly what you've got to do, whether it's in the head, neck, chest. That's why I'm guessing, again, he's innocent until proven guilty, but I'm guessing it's why we don't have any shots to the legs, the butt, the feet, nothing. It's all upper body, head, chest, neck. Yeah.
It doesn't do anything emotionally for the killer. It does not bring on the payoff. Every single one of those shots is a message, is anger, is you wronged me, I own you, those kinds of coercive type controlling behaviors that were allegedly exhibited in Monique Tepe's former relationship. So every single one of them is kind of is very specific. Even though they're in a cluster, we see three to the chest, one to the face. Similar pattern with Spencer. It's still to me are two totally different not different emotions, but like the difference in the way he feels toward where the killer feels toward Monique is different than the way he feels towards Spencer.
Yeah.
Plus, Spencer is easier to maybe get away or be a bigger threat.
When parents, I hope I haven't just turned my mic off, where parents smack their children and say like that's the child's bum, the parents go, wait till your dad comes home. He will tell you off. And before you know it, what was meant to be 1 or 2 slaps has turned out to be 9 or 10, because every time you're getting your anger out and your frustrations out on like what that child's done. I know it's different. And I'm talking about, when a parent scolds their child, but you do it continuously. You go, wait till your dad comes home, instead of just going, bad boy, which would be so much easier. It's just a way of getting your frustration out that's built up in you. And it's the same with Michael McKee, whatever his name is. He's probably done it with the guns, sort of like, this is for that, this is for that, that's for that, that's because of this, and do that because I hate you, sort of thing, and shooting in like the groin area. You'll never have kids again. Unfortunately, he wasn't going to survive. No one's going to survive that many gunshots, are they? So, but I just thought I'd bring that up to light.
So, a lot of times killers will take out the bigger threat first. And in this case, I saw in the autopsy report that Spencer was, I believe, 187 pounds and 73 inches in length. So he's not a tiny little person. He's a person of a bit of size, that is that
6'1"? Is that 6'1"? I think 73. Did I do the math right?
5 feet is 60 inches. Yes, about 6'1". So he is a definitely more of a formidable threat than Monique. And you can see them in their wedding pictures and things. She was definitely more
small,
of a petite,
tiny.
Yeah, she's small. It compared, So are we gonna take out Spencer first because you don't want Spencer trying to interrupt when you're
the
when
ultimate
really
goal.
killing,
Yeah.
killing your absolute
The ultimate target. And
Yeah,
you
your
know,
ultimate
this suspect who's arrested is massive. I mean, I saw him walk into court and I was astounded. I can't remember his specs, but he's well over 6'1", I think, and well over 200 pounds. He was a very big man. Didn't used to be. His earlier pictures showed he was quite slight, almost the same as Spencer Tepe. They seemed very alike. But then later in life, and that would have taken over 10 years because they weren't married long, and they were divorced and separated and finished after 10 years. He transformed. He transformed.
Wow.
Yeah. He became quite big.
Well, I think it's a reflection of, it may be a reflection of how he felt about himself, you know, and how, you know, he putting on some kind of armor, you know, to protect himself, or,
yeah. And I'll tell you,
so many reasons.
He didn't look obese. He looked as though he was a big, strong man, almost like he had put on all the weight at the gym. You know, he was much beefier, but in almost a healthy, fit kind of way. That was just my observations. Let me move on to the additional wounds that Monique suffered. Gunshot wounds to the torso and arms. I can't tell you how many in each space, other than the chest is 3 times. But torso and arms, once again, it tells me you're getting your arms up to defend yourself.
Yes. You know, this is, these are goal-oriented murders.
You know, let me correct that. I do have a little bit of information from the Columbus Dispatch on Monique. So let me just tell you what I've got.
Okay.
3 gunshots to the right chest, all clustered together. Now, is that shooter's right or is that victim's right? When they say that,
if they're saying, if that's coming from like a medical report, my understanding of that would be that's the right side of the victim.
Okay. So 3 gunshot wounds to the right chest, all clustered together. Again, if this is a vascular surgeon aiming for the heart, he's going for center mass there, and maybe she's turning slightly and it hits her right hand side. Wound. There's another wound to the right side of the torso, which would maybe tell you she's trying to get away.
Okay.
She's trying to defend. I don't know. There is a wound to the right forearm. Just like I said, if I was turning and trying to protect myself, that's what I might do, right?
Right. And we see the same twist, you know, the same kind of twist with, and these are all to the right, which is interesting because is she rolling off the other side of the bed?
I think she's standing. I think at this point, there's no
going
joy.
The other direction.
I mean, there's so little joy for somebody rage-filled to come in and just kill people as they lie down. I think he wants to make a statement, get up, get out of bed. I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to hurt him in front of you, and then I'm going to take you out in the face. But you're going to know everything. I'm going to mentally torture you with everything that's on my mind for the last 10 years. So get up, you know, or sit up or something, you know.
And then I'm going to own you for the rest of my life because this, you know, is such an intimate act between any kind of murder is an intimate act between a killer and a victim, in my opinion. It's more intimate than any other act because you can only die with one person like one time. You know, that
just ask a serial killer.
Yes.
It's their
absolutely.
Ultimate control in life.
And they can, you know, unfortunately, killers, the murders don't start when the victims die, and they don't end when the victims die. The murder really starts when the killer starts planning the murder. And I don't think they stop until murders don't end with the death of the victim. They more or less end when a killer stops getting satisfaction from the murders. And I think that this was, again, goal-oriented murder in this case. Very deliberate, very purposeful locations on the bodies. Again, not in the legs, not in the big toe, not in the tip of the finger. This is to the head, to the torso, to the kill zone. It is lethal. It is prolonged, lethal, rapid attack that is for the purpose of inflicting pain, injury, death, and the cathartic release of all of this anger and power and control. Domestic violence is about power and control. Domestic violence homicide is about power and control as well.
You know, it also reminds me of my protective equipment when I was at war. I had a flak vest that covered my front kill zone and my back kill zone, not much in the side. And I had a helmet, you know, for the head kill zone. So that tells you he would know, as a vascular surgeon, if he's guilty, he would know exactly how to do it easily and quickly and make it painful and make it loud and ugly. And there's more. I told you there's a wound to the right forearm. There's also, according to the Columbus Dispatch, a wound to the right hand. So forearm, hand, and 2 wounds to the left upper arm. So maybe them coming up, you know, again.
Yes.
This is the ultimate sign of don't do it. You know, almost every animated, you know, scene shows somebody saying no. And this is sort of the position of defense, you know, of putting your right arm above your head and left arm at your face and trying to protect yourself from whatever's coming.
All right. But, you know, one thing that, like, you know, fictional shows like that get wrong is like how people like fly around when they get, you know, like fly onto the ground, like in this very dramatic way. It's typically not like that, you know, with gunshot wounds. The bloodstained evidence shows us that that's really not consistent. That's not really reality. That's really production. But in this case, like you're saying, it's consistent with defensive wounds. It's to trying to protect herself. I think we see the same thing with Spencer. The same thing. The arms come up, you know, they don't open themselves up. People close themselves up, you know, like shells, like they try to protect themselves if they're being attacked. And, you know, he has the position of a weapon. The weapon, they're not armed, right? So, you know, we don't have any information that they have any type of weapon. So he's got the upper hand. He is in control of this situation, and he can call the, no pun intended, but literally call the shots, you know what I mean? Of how this is going to go down, and
start to finish.
Make sure he's and make sure that he's accomplishing every single goal from the emotional and the cognitive state, that the organization of the whole thing, the sophistication of the whole thing. So
again, I talked about this earlier, but I'm going to let you know now that another piece of the report of Monique Tepe's autopsy suggests that she was shot at close range, which I'm looking through this pattern, as you call it, the wound pattern analysis. And I wonder if he shot her in the chest 3 times. Again, the killer, whoever it is, shot her in the chest 3 times. She's trying to protect herself, and she gets the wounds in the hand and the arm and the forearm. And then she's down. And then you get the headshot at close range execution style. I always wonder if that's how you get the perfect aim on the face, not even the head, the face, right cheek. So she's maybe down and her right cheek is up, and then it's to the face. I wonder if that, or if the face was the first lucky shot, because it's not easy to aim in the dark. This is a pitch black. I assume the lights weren't on. I shouldn't.
Right.
Maybe he switched the lights on and said, get up. We're going to talk. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is the defendant in this case strikes me as the type that's never going to tell anybody what went on in there. What's going to be critical for the prosecution to help explain this to a court is not only the sequencing of events like you're describing. Do the lights go on first? And that would not surprise me. That would not surprise me at all, because you do have the clusters, right?
Yeah,
and we know that we have a shooter, no matter who the shooter is. We know that we have a shooter that is competent with a firearm or her position on the fly, and that they are able to shoot across multiple planes of the body and still hit critical targets that render a victim incapacitated, and then of course cause death. So I think you could be very right that there's an element of, you know, the lights go on. There could be direct language. There's the element of surprise. They have absolutely no idea, you know, that this is about to happen. They're caught under, maybe under blankets or something like that, where they have to move away. And does it say where we don't know where she was found, right?
We don't, but I can say that the 911 caller could only see Spencer
Which makes me
fallen
think
off
she's
the
not in
bed.
there.
Well, she could have fallen off the other side of the bed that's not visible from the doorway that the caller had approached and didn't go closer. So let's say the bed is inside and she's on the other side of the bed, having stood up, fallen out of bed, whatever it is. Maybe she's eclipsed by the bed, and that's why the caller could only see one person on.
So the caller didn't go into the room. Is that what your understanding was?
The caller said he could not go further, whether that meant mentally or physically barricaded, whatever it was. The caller said, I can't go further. I can't get further. I think the caller had children to deal with as well, and there was more to it. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Yes, absolutely. So we don't know that yet. And that position is going to be a huge piece of the puzzle of where her body is recovered, because that's going to lend to like what you were mentioning earlier, Ashley, about the layers of blood. A lot of times you will find like if you have two victims in a scene like this and both are bleeding at the same time, which we know they are both bleeding at the same time, and we don't have any indication that anybody else is bleeding in the scene. So from like bloodstain pattern analysis side of the house, we're going to be looking for those layers of blood, which what came first, what came second, what items are maybe disrupted and on top of blood, what blood actually spattered, back spatter versus forward spatter. All of those kind of things are going to come into play. And you're dealing with fabric, a lot of fabric, in
bedding,
a bedroom,
carpet,
maybe. Yes. So the way that blood behaves on every different fabric is different. Like the way it behaves polyester is different, the way that it behaves on cotton and synthetics and stuff. So sometimes, the blood stains can be stretched out because like the droplet of blood goes onto the fabric. Sometimes they sit directly on top of that fabric, and they just sit there like in a little spheroid on top of the fabric, and they don't absorb. And then there's other types of fabrics where the blood will absorb, and then it changes the size and shape. It distorts that size and shape. And it's like, okay, can we really use that to analyze exactly what was going on right here? It still tells a story. But then the DNA is going to also play a big role in, okay, we're going to swab this, we're going to swab this, and we're going to divide the room. Like me, I would divide the room into area A, area B, area C, area D, like those kinds of things. And then I would swab bloodstain A1 from area A1, bloodstain 2 from area A, like those kinds of things. I would end up with like 10 bloodstains selected from each of the distributions. And of course, we identify those based on the patterns. Bloodstain pattern analysis cannot be used alone. It has to be used in context with the totality of circumstances of the case, but it also needs to be used with the DNA, to like put people where they go in the scene, and also connecting it to that event. Now, in this case, it's very highly unlikely that there's going to be a bunch of blood in the room other than from this event, right? But that's not always true in every case. Honestly, it's not. I mean, sometimes you do have what looks like to be old blood, and you're having to test it because you're like, is that even relevant
part
to
of this
scene?
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
I cut my foot during the summer and I stepped on the carpet and
Exactly. So swab like 10 stains from each of the areas, each of the distributions to the room. And I'm imagining that there are going to be different distributions because of what we're talking about here, that we have movement. These wound patterns are indicative of movement. And even though these are like prelim reports that we're looking at here, it's still illustrious of potential movement. We're not going to know that until much later, but that the bloodstains are going to tell the story.
Here's something that might tell you quite a story, that the time of death, again, this is for Monique Tepe, not for Spencer. Spencer's time to death was within seconds to minutes, but time to death for Monique, the coroner determined, occurred rapidly. Rapidly was the word, not minutes to, not seconds to minutes, rapidly.
So there's a catastrophic injury to her body that was where she was not able to sustain life.
Yeah. That either the head wound first, or in the circumstance, I imagined the multiple shots to the kill zone, the heart right away. Listen, I've heard about the firing squad being one of the quickest ways to die because the aim is to the heart, and multiple gunshots to the heart mean you are dead within seconds, not minutes. You don't sit there and bleed. You die fast. And they've said that that kind of execution is actually strangely one of the most humane, because you die so quickly. And that's what I wonder, if maybe the 3 shots to this right side of the chest might have been the rapid death.
Just showing you some photos, guys.
Taking that, but it
Right.
could be for both. And absolutely, I mean, the fact that if this is true about what she was experiencing in the last, and I'm going to say 30 days, because I saw something where there was allegedly an element of stalking potentially going on prior to the murders of Monique and Spencer Tepe. And in domestic violence homicide, it is very common, if not statistically significant, that we usually find, like, whatever the trigger is or whatever the catalyst is, within sometimes 7 days, but 30 days prior to the death of the victim. But I don't know that I've seen it as much.
We got we got the report. Dry run alleged on the 6th of December. It's 24 days before the killing. So yeah,
I mean, 30 days.
If that is all true,
yes.
That's she was at the Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis on December 6th. My son was there at the same time. That's why I remember that date so clearly. And she was with friends and with her husband, and she had to leave the game midway through. And Spencer told the friends, Monique had to go back to the hotel. Something's happened with her ex. And we have learned that the ex was seen on the Tepe's ring cam, or at least the ex was recorded. Dr. Michael McKee was recorded in the home, in the area of the home, the curtilage of the home, which is, your property, skulking around for a couple of hours. That's my lingo, but it was several hours. He was on camera on the curtilage of the Tepe home. Don't know if we got inside. Just know that he was there. And then if you imagine, they have cams, and maybe that's what she saw on her phone when she got an alert. There's something at your house, and then she can see her ex maybe walking around her house, and that's why she needed to leave the game. So yeah, there's anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety about that, because there's no way the police would know about Dr. Michael McKee allegedly being on the curtilage of the Tepe home unless someone from the Tepe family gave it to
Did
them.
they report that? I'm wondering if Monique reported that he was there to police, like if there, was a report of the stalking type behavior prior to this event.
I can tell you, no, the police said that they'd had no reports of disturbances from the Tepes home. They had not had that report. Now, there's all sorts of semantics that you can apply to that. Did they get a report that there was an intruder or that there was someone? I don't know. But the way they worded it made it sound as though there'd been a report incident at the Tepe home regarding domestic violence in any way.
So stalking, of course, is one of the most common precursor behaviors that is observable in domestic violence homicide, whether it's a current, temporary, or former intimate partner. So that kind of, just runs consistent with this entire situation. And the more information that I hear, the more I can understand the dynamics and the characteristics, not only of the scene and just kind of imagine what this is looking like, and what I expect that we'll find as we get closer to where this case is going to be put before the court. And again, like the way that domestic violence works, it's always about power and control. So there's also this element of organization. So like familiarity is people that are afraid, people that are in a panic when they kill often make a lot of mistakes, and they're easy to catch. But people like this that commit these types of homicides, when they do this, they're planning. So like that stalking behavior, is it twofold where it is that where the murder actually began? Is that where it actually started? Did it start prior to that? Did it start, you're always going to be my wife, I'm going to buy the house next door? For me, I'm looking for that. Where did the murder actually begin? And what is the catalyst here? I'm not exactly sure what the trigger is, but I can tell you that from that, if that is true, that Mr. McKee was observed on the camera footage on the 6th of October. And I believe their date of death, is it not the 30th of December? Not October.
30th. It's 24 days before the
December.
No, it's December, and December 6th is the observation that's in the police affidavit of him on the curtilage of the Tepe property. And on that same day, the Tepes are traveling. They're in Indianapolis for the Big Ten game, and she has to leave the game halfway through. She's there with her friends. These tickets are expensive. This is an incredibly important game for Indiana University. I know because it's my son. And she had to leave and go back to the hotel because there was some issue with her ex. And there you have it. I mean, you can put two and two together.
To me, I don't know, like I said, the murder sometimes starts way before the death of the victims. And so like this, the stalking behavior, is consistent with the pattern of domestic violence overall. But then on top of that, the familiarity with the house, that makes an offender more comfortable. So that's why you see in like serial robberies and serial burglaries and things like that. Like they want to become familiar by casing. You hear people say, oh, they case the joint, right? And they're casing.
Yep.
Is that what he's doing? Is he becoming more familiar? Because that lessens his own anxiety. But I don't see it. I don't see anxiety in the scene at all from him.
He was off from work that day. So very convenient. And you know what? With social media these days, who knows if there wasn't some social media blast that went out somewhere saying, can't wait to see you at the Big Ten game this week or next week or whatever. So that would alert someone.
But it's a long drive.
10 hours away. I could make a trip that day. They're going to be away. They're going to the Big Ten game. Yeah.
From his house to her house?
So it's a 6-hour drive-ish. If you're going to stop and get gas and eat and go to the bathroom, it's going to be 6 there, 6 back, or 5 there, 5 back if you race and wear a diaper, But yeah, I mean, you're going to drive a long way. You're going to need the day off. You're going to need the day off to get there and back and do a couple of hours on location. That's the other thing. A couple of hours.
The planning is
If it's him,
the plan, right? If Mr. McKee is found guilty of these murders, and he indeed is the correct suspect, the level of planning,
extraordinary planning.
yes, it's extraordinary because it is so goal oriented. It is so goal, and he's a surgeon. You know, Mr. McKee is a surgeon. He is a goal-oriented person. A surgeon, you can't become a surgeon easily. That's a lot of hard work. You know, it's a lot of time. It's a lot of education. It's a lot of studying. It's a lot of things.
Up to 15 years.
Yes. You know, dedication and being able to be like, this is the goal and I'm staying on my path. You know, like, so like when you're looking at the personality, we don't know a lot about him yet, but I definitely think, you know, the fact that the profession of Mr. McKee is the fact that he's a surgeon, that is a goal-oriented profession just in and of itself. And it's a high goal. It's a big goal. It's not, you know, something, you know, easily acquired by most people. So it's so consistent with the scene is always a reflection of the personality, cognition, emotionality of the offender. And as we continue to talk, Ashley, is it unbelievably sad and tragic? Yes, from every standpoint that we could possibly discuss. But it is also totally consistent with what we know so far about the defendant who has been charged in this case. It's consistent with, I think the state is moving in the right direction. I don't know either, but they believe that they are.
Dr. Petler, I could talk to you for hours. I have already had you for over an hour, and I know I have overstayed my welcome. I cannot thank you enough for this. You're absolutely brilliant, and I so appreciate the way you think. I think everybody who's watching right now, I like to call it our coffee clutch, our community, whatever it is. We are really invested in these kinds of stories and this kind of justice for victims. And so hearing you walk us through this and help us understand this is just so invaluable. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoy talking with you about these things, and you know, it gets my brain going too. And so I enjoy our conversations about these things because I do think it's important for people to understand, because sometimes when misinformation is out there, it scares people. It scares people. Yeah. So to actually understand, you know, a little bit about what we see in domestic violence, homicide, in the realities of those things, or what we see in homicide overall, or what we see in serial predation, and any of these types of cases. I think that's important for people to understand so that it can quell a lot of the fear and a lot of the comments that kind of get way out of hand with all the technology today that we have to consume all of this information. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here. I'm honored to work with you on these cases.
This case.
So there you go. I want to show you, they've still got the, where's my StreamYard? Why am I not there? Let's do smaller. They still got GoFundMe page going. They haven't quite met their goal though. Because obviously you got to remember the money's going towards the children, any psychological help they need, etc., etc. So I'll just share that up on screen, and I will try and link it in my comments. I'll pin it to the comments tab. If anyone wants to donate, you'll have the link from there. So as you can see, just checking you can see what I can see. They wanted to raise 250,000 USD dollars, I presume that is, and they've raised 96% of that target. So they've got 2,339,663, and they're still donating. Like you got 2 days ago, 8 days ago, 20 days ago. And all sorts, and it's done by the cousin. And it just goes on to say, our family is devastated by the tragic sense of loss of Spencer and Monique. They were both extraordinary people who had lives that were filled with love and joy and a deep connection to others. Their presence was as big as their hearts. Monique's charm and infectious smile lit up the room. She was warm and strength that inspired everyone around her. Spencer was the soul of every gathering, grand in personality, yet calm, steady, and kind. Together, they were truly a remarkable inside out and were a very solid pair with a bright future. They were both proud parents of two beautiful children, and every day they showed up with unwavering love and devotion to their family. The abrupt loss of Spencer and Monique has changed their life daily in many ways that are still unfolding. This fund exists to help to provide stability and care for the children and the immediate family members who are supporting them during this time. The outpouring of love has meant more than words can express. So thank you for helping to support the children and the family together. It takes one step at a time, which is so, so true. You know, it's one step at a time. You can't go 10 paces. And that, because if you head 10 paces in one go, you go back 6. But if you're not able to donate anything, just share the story on your Facebook page or your X or your Instagram or wherever you go to. So, you know, sharing is the power of the words, as I say. So with that, I'm now going to sign out because my head is absolutely killing me. And I think I spent too long on the computer today. My fault, big bad. I was trying to do some pre-recorded videos ready for tomorrow because I'm out tomorrow because I've got a funeral to attend to. And it's like an 1.5-hour journey each way. So I was planning to do some recording and release them for tomorrow. But I didn't realise how long Ashley was going to be talking for. I do love Ashley. She is really cool. And what she says is truth. So, you know, you're not going to get any winding false information from Ashley. So thank you again for watching and spending the last 1.5 hours with me, even though I've had to disappear a couple of times. So I do apologize for that. If you can like and subscribe, that would mean so much to me. It helps to get out in the algorithm, and you're liking because you like the story. If you could like and subscribe, if you can, it's free. Cost money to subscribe, and then that way, anytime I have any new recordings, you got a notification coming. So once again, thank you all for watching and listening. I do hope you have a rest of a good day.